Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Zero to Hero. I'm here as always with my good buddy Matt.
Hello.
And I think today we want to start out by just kind of going back into our past and looking at some of our funny old projects and old conquests. Kind of what made us who we are, I guess.
Yeah, the evolution of Matt.
The evolution of Matt squared.
Yeah, Matt squared. Matt and Matt.
Matt and Matt.
It's like the evolution of dance, but not even that cool. So.
Well, in nerd
to us.
In nerd, it's pretty cool.
All right, fair.
All right, if you don't mind, I've been dying to bring this up because I just feel like it deserves to be discussed.
Oh boy.
My very first borderline entrepreneurial project was when I wanted to make a perpetual motion device.
Yes.
That was it. That was so my big idea, the idea of a lifetime, was to make a machine or device that was capable of harnessing magnetic power to basically spin itself forever and with enough force that it could crank a turbine and generate electricity. So we'd have not only perpetual motion, but we'd have infinite energy.
So for those of you that don't know, perpetual motion machine is generally accepted to be totally impossible.
Yes.
So Matt wanted to really ease himself into entrepreneurship.
Yes. So I jumped right in with a theoretically impossible perpetual motion device.
Yes.
I thought that my idea was relatively solid because I had just sat through physics class in high school. This was back in high school, and we learned about magnetic fields and how magnetic field lines work. And essentially, we know they have north and south poles, magnets, right? So magnetic field lines go from north to south, kind of around in a circular.
Like Santa Claus.
No, a circular pattern outside of the magnet. So what I thought was, taking that into account, I calculated an angle. I actually forget what angle it was, but it would be like the optimal angle where if you lined up this turbine that had real strong magnets on the edge of each of the turbine blades, and then you had set magnets outside, not connected to the turbine, that wouldn't move fixed. That's what I was looking for. The angle would keep continuously propelling each of the turbines forward. Does that make any sense?
It does.
It does.
Well, I think we've all had that moment too, where you sit through a class in high school or college, and it's day 4, and you have suddenly discovered the solution to every problem within that field. You're like, this is my 4th day of psychology, and I therefore know everything there is to know about the human mind. I feel like we all go through that. We have that moment, And
then you take the next class and realize that, well, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, wait.
No, never mind.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to see. I went ahead and bought gears, and I built myself a Dynamo, which is just basically just a hand-powered. Oh, it's you ever see those hand-powered radios?
Yeah.
They utilize a Dynamo, which is just a freaking coil of wire, and then with a magnet. Oh, sorry, it's a coil of wire, and then you put a magnet in the middle, and you spin the magnet. And because that's the propeller of the turbine, right?
Yeah.
You spin the magnet. By spinning that magnet, you're making the electrons in the wiring move, and that generates electricity. So I set everything up. I made a dynamo. I put these magnets on the propeller blade that I made, and it just didn't work.
You took attempt the impossible very literally. But I think it's one of those things where you do sort of try things out, and you really try things out. You've always really tried things out.
Yeah.
You never just had an idea. You were always like, I'm at least going to give this a shot.
Yeah.
And you're not always going to succeed, particularly if you're doing something impossible.
That might make it a little bit more towards the not likely side.
But it's going to feel impossible sometimes. Especially if you don't know. Sometimes it's the trying it where you kind of refine it down a little bit.
Yeah. I'll tell you though, for a first project, it was really, I think that was one of the best moves I could have made, was to think of a first project that was that theoretical. So the thing was, I didn't just do something that I knew there was a solution to. I didn't just go online and do how to make a website. That would have been fine. not knocking anyone that does do that as their first project. The idea was I chose a completely theoretical project. So I had to use all of my problem solving skills to make this project. And I kind of further understood what it takes to get something off the ground.
Yeah.
You always run into issues that you're not going to think of.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. It actually makes me think. I think we chose the word digital entrepreneurship
We did.
really, really carefully, because neither you nor I are really people that just create a website, or that's the focus. It's more like digital tools are a way of going about achieving goals. Because I know, like, if I look back on my entrepreneurship, a lot of it wasn't business related. A lot of mine was more like a social entrepreneurship. So I founded a lot of organizations that I did, but that weren't necessarily about making money.
Which is weird to me, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting, because and it's definitely true. I won't, I won't say that making money is not definitely an aspect of digital entrepreneurship, or not one that I'm interested in. It is.
Yeah.
But there's always definitely been that element of I also wanted to do something useful.
Yeah.
And there's some of the really great people that talk about sales, and I'm not a salesy person.
What do you mean by? Do you mean sales in terms of? Yeah. What do you mean by sales?
Like the act of selling something.
Oh, like okay.
And I've heard it phrased really well. I'll have to look it up. Maybe I'll post it in the description underneath here. But it was this whole idea of like people feel a little bit dirty about sales, but really, if you believe in your product, if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe you're really providing value for people, that you're improving people's lives or giving them something that makes their lives better, easier, more enjoyable, then it's not. So I think a lot of my entrepreneurship at first was social, because I think back to grade school with like the founding the National Junior Honor Society. I think to high school, putting together a high school newspaper, trying to put together a publication board.
That's neat.
Like a lot of stuff like that was those were my initial ventures.
So can I ask you something? You describing yourself as an entrepreneur right there, I think my definition of what an entrepreneur is might be skewed or possibly wrong. I thought an entrepreneur was specifically someone that came up with a product that with the intention of selling it for a profit. I thought that was entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the traditional understanding of entrepreneurship is goods or services for profit.
Yeah.
I think there's been a real wave in the last decade or so of this idea of social entrepreneurship. So I think about microloan programs. So the idea that you give someone, usually it's in a part of the world that's considered third world.
Okay.
Giving them like a loan that to a first world individual might seem small, $100, $200.
A small loan of $1 million.
Right. Oh God. We're fresh off the first Trump-Clinton presidential debate. Small little $14 million loan. But like a $200 loan, and to someone in a third world village, it's a huge amount of money in U.S. dollars. And there's really great success stories, but this idea of yes, there's some profit there, but that's not the sole or primary motivation.
Yeah.
So I think you could be an entrepreneur with a nonprofit. Something that really does its purpose is no more than incidental benefit.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines too. Yeah, I definitely you could be an entrepreneur.
That's interesting. I mean, I have nothing. I have no evidence to refute that. I just in my head when I associate entrepreneur, I associate it with a dude standing next to his prototype. Like that's in my head. That's it.
And I think it probably still is the main thrust of entrepreneurship.
But it's interesting that that's the whole subset of entrepreneurship. That I didn't really even think about. And it's just interesting, kind of opened my eyes a little.
And I think entrepreneurs try to fill the needs of a society in not necessarily even unique, but or new. I guess not new, but in unique ways.
Yeah.
So they try to be a little innovative, and they try and fulfill needs. So I think if the need is something that isn't a product, if it's a service of some kind, even if it's a service that's non-traditional, I think entrepreneurs seek to fill it.
I guess that makes sense.
So like putting together the school newspaper, there was no money in that.
Yes.
There was lots of money to be lost in that. It was very expensive.
Yes.
But at the same time, having news is a societal need.
Yes.
So you fulfill, I think, those niches is the idea. It's the whole thrust behind
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And honestly, I think that's what, to a certain extent, I think it's the meeting point on the Phoenix projects. Do you want to do the Phoenix project? You do the
Phoenix
project.
projects.
I've talked a lot.
No, you're fine. To talk about the Phoenix projects, I have to take it one step back and talk about what led up to the Phoenix projects, which was my beautiful idea of creating auto blogs, which are like the sketchiest, like dirtiest thing ever. But that was one of my first experiences with like making websites and stuff like that. And a big problem that I had when I was doing these projects is that when you have to learn how to do every little aspect of what you're trying to create, you get bogged down by all the little things. So in making the idea was just to make a blog, right? But I couldn't just make a blog because I didn't have enough time just to make the content. So I like settled for making this idea of an auto blog where it would curate content from around the internet. It would post it onto my site, and I have a whole bunch of hacky little things that I can talk about later. But then the ultimate idea was to try to make a profit off of these curated contents, kind of like a StumbleUpon. That was the idea behind it. You know how I don't know how StumbleUpon makes money. I think they do it through advertising revenue, but they make it through.
They curate blogs.
They curate posts and blogs and stuff, and then you just click through it, right? And then that was the idea behind the Phoenix projects, which we worked on. Was we wanted to make kind of like upscale this and make this like a multi-network thing. It never really ended up panning out just because of. Actually, I think that was why it didn't end up working out. Is because we got bogged down by how many little things there were.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, we were, probably at the place where, honestly, some of you listeners are, where you know very little about, you're just reaching a point where you're starting to understand how little you know about websites and a lot of other stuff like that.
Yeah.
And putting that all together, and the fact that it is this many, many, many little projects, tasks, abilities, skills that all have to come together. It can be a little overwhelming, I think.
I think a lot of it is that you can't, for me at least, it was that you can't give in to that feeling that you're learning a new language. How are you going to be able to do it? Like, like when you sit down and look at Photoshop for the first time, it looks like the most terrifying thing in the world. But then 2 weeks down the line or 2 months down the line, it's like, it's just like using Microsoft Word. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. People always talk about like, how did you succeed? And they say there's this element of a lot of hard work. And you have to work hard for years and years and years. And that's definitely true. But I think they add a little too much foresight into it. So it's like they project themselves back and they act like they had this this really sort of amazing foresight that I don't think they necessarily did. So yes, you have to work hard. Yes, it takes a lot of years, but usually it's little incremental things.
Yeah.
So it's still very day to day. We could not have guessed 5 or 6 years ago that we would even be podcasting, let alone that we would be making this particular podcast.
Yeah.
But over the years, I think you sort of accumulate. So really, I think it's about, it's not about working hard on one particular idea. It's about working hard in the general sense of learning a new skill, picking up a new thing, making a new contact, reading a new piece of information.
Yeah.
And over time, without you really realizing it, the hard work begins to generate ideas.
So now that's interesting, Matt. It sounds to me, in hearing you say it, which I agree with all of that, in hearing you say it, that sounds like entrepreneurship by itself is a form of schooling.
Yeah.
It's almost like you are forcing yourself to learn all these new things and then combine them or otherwise in ways that allows you to come up with these new ideas, and eventually inspiration strikes you. But in the process of getting inspiration to strike you, you learn 5 different things, and you learn how to do this and what this means and what implication LLCs have on whatever, and you know what I mean?
Sure, and you notice, I think about this a lot with, look at the judges on Shark Tank.
Okay.
Like, if you look at them, you'll notice when certain people come on that show, people that have really done their research, they know which sharks are good
do.
at which generalized things. I mean, you have your QVC shark.
Yeah.
She does tons of patents. I forget her name. God, her name's escaping me right now. We can look it up.
Yeah.
But tons of patents, really good at marketing products. She has access to QVC. She didn't have access to QVC 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, those things are built up over time. You build yourself into, and you learn new skills, but understanding how to be a real estate entrepreneur is really understanding hundreds and thousands of concepts. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It's understanding real estate law. It's understanding how the culture works. It's understanding, what's the difference between a condominium and a homeowners association. And that's one piece of knowledge you have to have out of many to really start to become an expert.
You know what's funny? That reminds me of what you were telling me a while ago, in that being working at a law firm, you got this experience where you found that working at a law firm, you found that you had to learn all these different little things based on the case that you were doing. What was that one about a forklift? And then you could tell it.
So some details you can tell.
No,
some
no,
details
no.
you can't,
I meant
but
just.
Yeah, so the general idea is like, when I was at the firm, you'd get a case in, and it would have to do with someone got injured because they fell off a forklift, or they were injured by a crane, or they got hurt in a conveyor, or whatever it is, and you'd end up learning everything there was to know about the forklift or the crane or the conveyor.
Fun.
And it takes you a lot of time. You have to put in 30, 40 hours of understanding the case, understanding what the forklift does. If you're someone that has no understanding of mechanics, then you really have to it takes a while, because you can understand the law, but if you don't understand the thing that you're working with, you're going to be at a disadvantage.
So then entrepreneuring is there's a lot of parallels between entrepreneuring and like being a lawyer, being in any sort of research-based position, I would assume, being really anywhere that you're just learning different types of skills.
Sure, I think entrepreneurship is a skill set. At the end of the day, and maybe in the general sense, it's learning how. Maybe there's a little bit of learning how to network, or
there's so many things like that you don't even think about.
Yeah, that go along with it. I think they say it takes 20,000 hours.
To be an expert at something.
Right, to really gain a skill.
Yeah.
I think it's true of entrepreneurship. I think you put in hours, and it's not one set skill, but honestly, learning how to use something like Crowdfire doesn't take 20,000 hours.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. But I wonder if at a certain point, I always sort of wonder this, and I think it's the answer is going to be yes, but at a certain point, do you learn how to learn new skills? It has to be a yes, because, especially if it's related things, right? So think about learning a new programming language. I know for a fact when you learn a programming language, it's about half as hard to learn your second one. And then it's easier to learn the third one, and it's easier to learn the fourth one. I feel like that's got to be true with a lot of things in general, though. If you over time accumulate the knowledge on how to learn something, I feel like that's a tangible skill you can have. Being a quick learner is actually a thing.
Sure, I think learning some things lend themselves to learning other things. So I took Latin in high school.
Yeah.
And Latin is the root of the Romance languages. So Italian, French, everything like that, it's easier to learn, understand those languages having learned Latin.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it lends itself to that.
All right, so here's one more short funny story is after I worked on my perpetual motion device, I got into circuitry, whatever. So I wanted to make a little, you ever see like James Bond, like a spy bug type thing where you stick it under the desk and it transmits voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to make that. So I found schematics online and so that's fine. So the thing was, I wasn't content with like buying kits that made it or just buying one. So I bought a breadboard. I bought basically it's a fiberglass. It's a
what's breadboard?
Copper. It's a copper sheet with fiberglass on top to make your own circuit. You dump acid on it and etch the etch the circuitry pattern on it.
That
and
is
stuff.
not nearly as edible as I was hoping it was.
No,
gonna be.
it's
No,
not.
It's a shame.
It's
Okay.
not. So
I kind of want bread now.
bread now, yeah.
Yeah.
No, so what I did was I was able to. Oh, so it was in the dorm room. It was freshman year in the dorm room. So I bought all this crap and I like printed on my printer. I found out if you print ink on this like fiberglass breadboard and then you dump acid on it, the ink acts as a buffer zone.
Where did you get acid?
From Radio Shack.
They sell acid.
They sell acid to etch. It's called etching acid. I forget. It was a long time ago.
All right.
But so that fine. I did that like out in the common room. I just like dumped it and it was all smoking and it was funny. So then I had to cut the breadboard. And this is where the funny part comes in, is because I bought a little handheld hacksaw from Home Depot.
Radio Shack.
And from Radio Shack or Home Depot. And I went out into the stairwell at like probably 11 o'clock at night one night. And in the stairwell, I just like sawed my little circuit chip out of this breadboard. That's funny enough. But then the RAs went on rounds.
Yeah.
And they walked past, like, up to me, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just making a circuit." "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh." And then they walked away.
I feel like only at
An engineering.
only at engineering school, right? Like anywhere else, like there would be serious questions, but I'm just go like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Isn't that phenomenal though?
How did your roommates feel about this?
Brian was cool with it. Brian didn't give a crap.
You had a very relaxed roommate.
Nah,
I feel like if I had walked in and I had seen you like,
Dumping acid.
or with a hacksaw, I think that would have probably done it for me. Like,
It was kind of just like people like would pass me and be like, "Oh, Matt," and then like walk away.
okay, all right. Well, you're
It's-
very good natured, so admittedly,
Yes.
like you're not giving off the serial killer vibe. but-
No, or at least like, if I like you, I probably won't kill you.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
so it's all good.
Entrepreneurial tips.
Yeah, get people to like you so they don't kill you. So
So that brings us to college.
that brings us to college. It does.
Yeah.
So what was one of your major accomplishments in undergrad? Maybe give me something. What did you do undergrad that was entrepreneurial or?
I graduated.
You graduated?
I graduated. Entrepreneurial. I would say my biggest entrepreneurial venture was the United Alabama Project.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
Yeah. So
United Alabama.
yes.
Okay.
It was a really cool story actually. I was on. I went to a study abroad trip in Belgium for political science. We were
Okay.
in Brussels. We did a couple side trips, and one of my roommates there was a very conservative Republican guy, and I tended to be more a moderate Democrat. And we had a lot of really interesting conversations over the course of the trip. And one night we were on the Camp de Mars, which is the field outside of the Eiffel Tower.
Cool.
And we're sitting there. The Eiffel Tower is all lit up. It's beautiful out. We're drinking wine out of the bottle like classy people do. And we just had this conversation about how great it was we were able to have real open conversations with each other, despite the fact that we came from very different political, and just geographic backgrounds.
Yeah.
New Jersey, Alabama, much different. I went to, anyway. So we got back. I ended up working on this political campaign. One thing led to another. We ended up founding this political advocacy and consulting group called the United Alabama Project.
Political advocacy and consulting.
Yes.
Okay, so answer me this. This is not going to be it, but I feel like it's when people are unsure of their decision, they go to you and seek political guidance.
We did a couple of things. We did a very successful Get Out the Vote campaign. I will put an image. We can put an image up. I'll show you the great work that we did. We had a very successful Get Out the Vote campain, and this was all for campus politics.
Okay.
Like
campus politics, like USG,
Sure,
undergraduate
sure.
student government.
Sure. Yes. Got a little more complicated than that, and that's a whole topic I think for a separate podcast.
Yeah.
But we did that. We ran campaigns. We submitted a pretty successful elections reform proposal. So a lot of stuff like that. I think that was probably my biggest, most successful entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that was definitely something where, in the digital side of things, one of the reasons our Get Out the Vote campaign was so successful was because we utilized Facebook. We utilized Facebook advertising, paid Facebook advertising, and also a really great graphic.
Oh.
We had a really, and when I show the picture, you'll see it was really well done. They were all over campus, but they were also online.
Out of curiosity, did you find that Facebook advertising worked well?
I think we had, and I have to go back and check, but I think we had about 9,000 views.
Wow.
On our one post.
Yeah, that's pretty solid.
Which was really great.
Yeah.
We were a campus of I want to say 30,000.
So 9,000 is that's. And does Facebook charge you a lot for that? I don't know. I've never looked into.
I want to say it wasn't that much money.
Huh. That's interesting.
We're going back 4 years now, I think. Yeah. But I want to say it was like $20.
For 9,000?
Yeah, it was not very expensive.
That's impressive.
Because it was just like an 8 or 9 hour campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. That's cool.
That's great. It was interesting because we had the internet. It was all online voting.
Oh, that's cool.
And the internet went down on campus. There was a whole thing with that, and then we were on the radio. It was a lot of interesting things.
The internet went down?
Yes.
I didn't know campus internet. I mean, I guess.
Well, it was. There's a lot of our belief and speculation was that it was sabotage. Actually,
someone was DDoSing you.
We think that's actually what happened.
That's hilarious.
So it was once again a topic for a whole other podcast. But that was definitely, I think, my college venture.
Oh, that's cool. I've had a lot of little small college ventures. I don't have any big guys, but I will say that something. For those of you listening that are more interested in the technical side, so obviously I'm more the technical side and Matt's more the logistical business and law,
handsomeness,
politics, law-based side. But anyway, if anyone's interested in the technical side, as a first project, I really think you should look into learning how to build your own computer. I know that doesn't really have to do much with entrepreneuring, but the thing is, when you build your own computer, you tend to be real particular about what software you install, and you start to learn how computers work and stuff. And if you're doing digital entrepreneuring, which I'm assuming you're interested in if you're listening to the podcast, that's where a lot of it started from me. The digital aspect of it was just from learning how to make my own computer, and in setting up your own computer, you just kind of naturally learn to use different programs and learn how things worked. So it costs money for sure if you want to build your own system, but if you have the opportunity to, I definitely recommend it. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a great takeaway of, you and I have both always been interested in entrepreneurship and digital entrepreneurship, but you start off grounded in what we're still calling the real world. And I think understanding the basics behind something, understanding how to run a on the ground Get Out the Vote campaign, or how to build an actual computer, are sort of necessary to translating those skills onto the internet, onto a digital format a little bit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. A lot of it has to do with the fact that when you do these real world things, if I'm being honest, it's I want to say the technique, but I'm going to say methodology, just the way of thinking, your mindset. You get into this idea that really it's problem solving. That's what I'm looking for here. Entrepreneuring, in my opinion and my experience, is just being a really good problem solver.
Yeah.
So if you're able to sit down and figure out, well, okay, I know this is, first of all, identify the issue, right? So I know this is my issue. How do I solve it? Well, that's in my realm of the in my side of the battle, that's what it comes down to, is just figuring out how to solve these problems that inevitably come up.
Right, and if you take college courses on entrepreneurship, what they're going to talk about is just you're going to encounter and go into the world, and someone's going to have, big problem, capital B, capital P. This idea that they're going to have this issue, and that as a good entrepreneur, your job is to go and say, hey, so-and-so, I see you have big problem. Here's my solution to big problem. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is all problem solving. And
Yeah.
I notice, we really haven't talked about making money at all so
No,
far
we
this
haven't.
episode.
We really haven't.
You know, and it's interesting because it's not like it's out of our minds in any stretch of the
No,
imagination.
that's like all that we think about. But.
Sure. I wouldn't say all.
Okay, fine.
Occasionally I fall asleep. But no, I mean, so it's really interesting. Like, you can't
Yeah.
expect
Yeah.
to make money, and it can't be the only reason you're doing
Yeah.
it because you'll burn out.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And honestly, that actually is probably going to be the big takeaway from this whole 40-minute podcast, or however long it ends up being, is that you can't go into this with the mindset of I'm gonna make money. It's that.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, I think you hit it right on.
Yeah, and I think we're almost saying, like, you know, don't stop listening if that's the only reason you're doing it. But you're gonna burn out at a certain point. You
Yeah.
have to find something else that motivates you, something else you care about.
Yeah.
That isn't just making money, because the making money does honestly take a while.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be one of those people that's really lucky and right off the bat, you know. But I think for most people, like, it takes a while before you're really at a point where you can turn it into, you know, a career.
I wonder if it would be fair in even saying it takes a while before you understand what your passions are. Do you know? Like, when you start doing this sort of thing and thinking of ideas and stuff, you may have something that seems really cool to you, but then in theory, right? But then in practice, you really don't enjoy it. I've come
Sure.
across that a couple of times where I've just picked up something, thought it was really neat in theory, and then tried it and realized that, like, this isn't something that I want to do. Like when I played with Fiverr, honestly, like, it was fun and I enjoyed it, but it was not something I wanted to do long term. It's just, you know, but when it comes down to is, I honestly think it comes down to finding your passion. This for us
Sure.
is at least my passion. I think you're obviously passionate about it too. So
Yeah.
this is a great suit for us. It's a great fit for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Podcast.
think part of it is it takes you a while also to find the problem. Because, you know, we talked about this at the very beginning of the episode, this idea that, like, you go into this class, you know, in high school or college, you get through the first couple of classes, and you feel like you've found the big problem and the big solution. But the truth is, it's always more complicated.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the literal breaking edge field where something has never been done before.
Yeah.
And even then, you have to understand, like, the nuances of, you know, it's not enough to be like, oh, you know, in the law you might have like, this is a torts problem or a contracts problem, but, like, the exact legal issue is going to be a lot more specific than that.
Yeah.
And it takes research and understanding of everything, and I think that's what happens here. Like, you and I might have recognized the need for this or the need for that, but we really recognize the need for this podcast.
Yeah.
You know, this is something where when we tried to do this, it wasn't available to us in this
Yeah.
format, and that was a big problem. And then we have sort of endeavored to find a solution. But I definitely think it's about that. You know, it's about even being able to really recognize what the actual problems are takes a while.
I think that explanation was really helpful for me, and I'm sure it's helpful for everyone listening, because what that made me realize, even though now I'm also realizing that you've said it 3 times already, is that entrepreneuring is about finding the area that lacks something already. It's not about it's not necessarily about inventing something. It's about let me collect my thoughts. It's not necessarily about inventing something. It's about identifying the area where your contribution would be the most well received, or you know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, and figuring out what the actual
issue is.
The actual issue
Yeah.
is. And sometimes it is inventing something. But, you know, unless you are really in the position where you're first to market with something like the personal computer
Yeah.
or the automobile
Yeah.
or something like that, where you are identifying a problem that most people don't even realize that they have, then you're someone that blows up big right away.
Yeah.
But
Now, do you think that they also go through additional hurdles in trying to
Sure.
convince people that they need this thing that they didn't even know they needed?
Oh, God, all the time.
Right?
All the time.
Yeah.
You know, there's a really interesting story about actually Febreze.
Febreze.
Yeah, so I'm reading this book called The Power of Habit.
Okay.
I recommend it. We will post a link in the description to it. Really great book about if you have bad habits or if you want to try and start habits, or you're just curious about habits, great book. But it talks about in there when they first figured out, when they first found Febreze, and there's a whole story behind it. So Febreze ends up getting invented sort of by accident in a lab at Procter & Gamble. And at a certain point, Procter & Gamble realized that, oh my God, we found something that actually eliminates bad odors. Doesn't just mask
they
them.
Didn't mean to?
But eliminate. No, it's totally accidental. And I'm paraphrasing the story here. It's in the book, and I don't have the book sitting here with me. But basically, the scientist, the chemist, was working on something else, and he spilled some of it on himself, I think. And I think he had like a cat or something like that. And he went and met up with a friend, and they said, like, did you get rid of your cat? Like, it was something like that where, like,
no.
Like, it was totally accidental, and then he started doing tests on it.
Wait.
This is the story.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you.
That's amazing.
It was really cool.
This is something that's like in a movie.
But so the point I was getting at with the Power Habit book is when they tried to sell it to people, they tried to sell it as something that masked bad odors. So made things scentless or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And they had a really, really hard time. And once again, I'm really shortening the story here for the sake of the
That's
podcast. But what they ended up having to do was remarket it in a way that created a craving in people that appealed to something that people already understood. And then once people had adopted the product, then they sort of mentioned, oh, by the way, it also eliminates bad odors.
So what was it marketed as at first?
So originally they marketed it as
an air freshener?
No, it does. So it doesn't mask bad odors. It totally eliminates them.
Yeah.
And what they were marketing it as eliminate bad odors.
Yeah.
But what they ended up having to market it as is, so I think it's odors out, freshness in, or something like that. But they ended up rebranding themselves as this whole idea of after you're done cleaning, you spray it and it smells good, and then the smell matches what you think a clean room should smell like, and then later on they sort of said, oh, it eliminates odors. So sometimes the market is definitely slow, like the car or something like that. To adopt.
That's interesting. Is there a best strategy to do it, or it just depends on the market then?
I think we should do a whole podcast on that.
Okay.
You want to know more?
You want to know more?
These are little teasers here. So I definitely think it's true that if you're in that position, you're going to encounter challenges. But those are good challenges because if you're Uber and you just hit something great and you're a unicorn, then
you're an
you're a multi-billion-dollar valuation.
You're an Ubercorn.
Ubercorn. I don't know.
Ubercorn? No, that's not. I don't think I. Can I?
I'm picturing like a stalk of corn right now.
I don't think anything about that was good.
So, all right, I think that's about it for us today.
Yep.
Matt, any last words to
I think everyone should leave your suggestions for episodes in the comments, because right now we're putting together a list of the different topics that we want to cover, and we love to cover things that you actually want to hear or are interested in. So make sure if you listen to this, you throw just some suggestions in the comments, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, definitely. I think hopefully going forward, we can leave you with a little something at the end of the episode, and I think if today it's going to be anything, that's it's find your big problem, and that it's not just all about money. It's got to be about more than that. You have to have the passion, and the passion has to be about problem solving. And if you're really good and really valuable, the money comes.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, if you enjoyed the episode, give us a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing.
Yeah. But, subscribe, follow things.
Follow things.
Join things.
And click on things. But we appreciate it, and I guess we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. Sounds good. Bye, everyone.